Hello, welcome back to The Collision. It's Daniel here again. And hey, if you've ever wanted to see that girl from Twilight battle against some mermaid monsters underwater, then you're in luck. Underwater, the new kind of suspenseful sci-fi monster movie hit theaters this week, so let's talk about it. Hey, well, if you guys have been following The Collision for very long, you know I'm a sucker for these kind of movies. Seems like every couple months we get a new one of kind of, a man versus monster survival story. And I'm one of the reasons why we get these movies. There's just kind of something about that, that very basic, simple story that has always just intrigued me. Jaws, as I've said many times when we were wearing the shirt, is my favorite movie of all time. I did a review, Alien. There's a review on this channel where I kind of gush about that, another one of my favorites. A Quiet Place 2 years ago was my favorite movie of that year. So I'm probably, I don't think there's a whole lot of buzz surrounding this movie, but it kind of touched that nerve for me, that it had me intrigued at least to kind of experience that again. It definitely is calling back to those films, especially Alien, in a lot of this kind of the aesthetic ways and story, some of the kind of the tropes in the story. It's very clear kind of allusions back to Alien. Even the story itself. So you have kind of under the ocean, man's kind of drilling for resources deep under the ocean, kind of getting greedy as humanity tends to do. They dig too deep, monsters appear, and they got to survive. It's basically the story of Alien, but just taken from space and put deep in the water. Starring Kristen Stewart, who seems to kind of be in everything now. She didn't hear a whole lot of her after the Twilight films, and now it seems like she's showing up everywhere, and she does fine in this movie. But really, there's not a whole lot about this film that can really stand up against the films that it's clearly trying to emulate. In a lot of ways, this is a kind of an Alien wannabe film. But unfortunately, I think it takes all the wrong lessons from Alien, of what made that such a classic, engaging story. Kind of took all the wrong things from that movie and kind of put that front and center in this one. So the story itself, if you've seen the trailer, kind of the underground drill station, it gets a leak, things start exploding. That's literally the first scene in this movie. There's not, unlike some of the other kind of classic, monster versus man stories, there's really no slow build up, no time to kind of marinate with the characters, get to know them, kind of understand the settings. This film cuts off a lot of the kind of the extra details, the character building, kind of the setting, the establishing the location. It really it bypasses that and really throws you right into the action. Trying to make this more, I guess, exciting of a film. Within about 10 minutes of this movie, you already have these characters that you don't really know, kind of, rummaging through the wreckage and trying to figure out a plan to survive. And I think because of that, in some ways it throws you right into it. It's supposed to kind of increase the excitement of it. But I think because it skips the build up to it, you just don't care about the characters. You don't care about what's happening. You're not really clear with, what exactly they're trying to do, where they are. And it just sort of takes the kind of the foundation out of this movie and leaves it kind of feeling empty. You have these characters that you're not attached to. They're trying to do something that they haven't really established, where they're going or what they're trying to do. So you're just sort of left just kind of watching this action take place without really any kind of emotional resonance of what's going on. And it's not helped, kind of a drawback to a lot of these films that are filmed kind of underwater. It's just that it's so muddy and dark, they're deep under the ocean, that it's very jarring and hard to kind of get a clear sense of the geography of where they are. And you can't see a whole lot of what's going on. And I think the intention that they were going for was to use this sort of to disorient you and kind of leave, just that fear of being unable to see and unable to see what's going on. And I get that, but as a viewer, it kind of leaves you lost to know, a lot of times, characters are in a stressful situation, they're turning around, but because it's so muddy and dark, I really didn't know how to feel. I didn't really know what was actually happening to them. There's characters screaming, things happening, but the cinematography of this movie is kind of a mess, and it's just hard to it's hard to really connect when it's just kind of all muddy and gray. As far as kind of this like the kind of things to take away from this film, one of the things that always has drawn me to this kind of film is not that these films aren't really known for having a real intellectual message. Some of them get into some of that. Even like a Jurassic Park kind of gets into some bigger themes, kind of sci-fi stuff. But for the most part, these aren't films that are going to try and teach you any deep lessons or make you really leave the theater thinking. These films in a lot of ways kind of rise or fall on the ability to just make you feel an emotion. Like a movie like Alien, it's the whole movie, if we could kind of sum it up in this one word, is just fear. Just that looming presence, the whole movie, you're holding your breath, and it just kind of for a couple hours, you just get this experience of just terror and fear. And I think, as I said in the review for that film, I think that's a healthy thing that, I don't think films have to teach you stuff. I think just being able to feel that emotion that for a lot of us, we just don't feel very often is just kind of healthy. It's a good thing. And this film, it's not able to capture that same kind of feeling of dread and tension. The monsters in this film are a little more generic, but because they don't do a very good job at kind of establishing the menacing presence of them in a film like Alien, even though the alien in that movie, the xenomorph, is only on screen for I think about 12 minutes or maybe less in the whole movie. You kind of, even when it's not on screen, you always kind of have that fear. You can feel that it's out there lurking somewhere. This film lacks that, and it really when the monster isn't physically on screen, you just you're not fearful. You don't feel its presence lurking out in the ocean somewhere, which makes a lot of the scenes when they're kind of just trudging through the ocean trying to get to safety, it makes them kind of a little tedious because you don't really feel like they're in danger. They haven't established enough about the monster to really be fearful of it or to be to care about the characters. So when it does appear, it's played more in an action way than it is kind of a suspense, which I think really kind of hurts what this film is going for. At various points, the film tries to kind of have a message, maybe to compensate for the lack of just the emotion of it. As you kind of would expect with a movie like this, it touches on kind of the environmental issues. You're kind of waiting for it in a movie like this. A character kind of gives a little speech about, we dug too deep. Man should have left nature alone. Now nature's getting revenge on us. And it's just sort of that obligatory message you get in these kind of films. But really outside of that, they don't do anything in the film to unpack that or to wrestle with that or to do anything interesting about it. It's just kind of a token comment for environmentalism, and they kind of leave it at that. And again, the way the film starts, it kind of starts with a voiceover of Kristen Stewart, and it's actually a fairly interesting, kind of unexpected voiceover. She talks about the comfort in being a cynical person, kind of not expecting much, you're not disappointed, and it kind of sets the film up that, at least as a viewer, you're thinking, okay, this establishes where she is, and then she's obviously going to go on a journey to change and to change her worldview and to kind of find meaning and optimism. And kind of near the end of the film, they kind of bookend it with another kind of voiceover, which essentially kind of just reestablishes her view on the world and kind of the cynicism and, that life's kind of meaningless. So just sort of go out with a bang. And it just ends up kind of being a weird, kind of negative take on the whole film that it emphasizes that this main character that you've kind of been with, cheering for an hour and a half runtime just hasn't grown. They haven't gone anywhere. They kind of end the film in largely the same place that they started in. So kind of thematically, there's just not a whole lot of interesting things that you can see that they had several ideas and they try to throw all those in there, but they don't really take them anywhere, or at least anywhere kind of interesting. And maybe a couple other kind of quick things, I guess, is just to be aware of kind of as Christians going into this movie. Content-wise, it's about what you would expect from a kind of a PG-13 horror suspense movie. You have the token F-bomb that you're allowed to in these kind of movies. I was surprised there's actually not a whole lot of violence. There's death. The monsters kind of pick off the crew as you would expect. But you don't really see a whole lot of blood and gore or anything in this film. Most of the violence kind of happens off screen or alluded to. Characters kind of get dragged away and they're killed, and you don't see it happen. And maybe it's somewhat surprising that I actually found the lack of kind of the violence and the horror in it almost to take away from the story, because it didn't really have enough to really make you fear the monster. You don't really see the violence, you don't really see the consequences of what they're up against. But again, if gore and violence is something that you're just not into, there's really very little of that in this film. And I guess the last maybe kind of thing just to be aware of too is there is near the end there's kind of an extended portion of the film where Kristen Stewart, the lead actress, is basically in her underwear running around the ship, and it's not, they're in their underwater suits and they can't wear their clothes, and then she gets out of her suit. And it's not done in like a really kind of overly sexualized way. I don't think that's what they're going for. I think it was more kind of a homage to Alien, kind of an iconic scene with Ripley, similar scene. But it also just kind of seemed a little unnecessary, just to, a film that doesn't have a whole lot going for it, and you just have this young actress running around in her underwear. So I found that as something, to be aware of going into the film. But overall, I think this film is, it's even for someone like me that's pretty easily pleased by these kind of movies. I just found that, this film in a lot of ways is kind of, it shows you all the reasons why some of the great ones like Jaws and Alien, why they work. Kind of what this film is lacking is sort of what makes these other films memorable and kind of timeless stories. I found this sort of, it's somewhat entertaining, I guess. It kind of diverting maybe is a better word for it. But in the end, there's just not enough in this movie to really justify taking the time to watch it. Thankfully, it's only, I think, an hour and a half runtime. It's a short movie. They don't waste a whole lot of time, so it's not a huge commitment. But in the end, I left this movie just kind of feeling like, I'll go home and watch Jaws again or some of these better movies. But hey, if you saw this movie, I'd love to hear what you thought of it. If you had a more positive experience as I did, or if you were more like me and just thinking this film really fell short, it's kind of like a knockoff version of some of these great movies. Hey, I'd jump into the comments section. Let me know. Let's talk about it. And if you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. Keep up with all our video content. I want to thank you for watching. Hope you'll continue to collide with your world for Christ.